Hello, supervisors. I thought I'd make a quick screencast just to answer some of the questions I'm getting from supervisors. Firstly, as ever, thank you so much for the work that you're doing with students. We're now getting to the point where the students are going to begin filling in the production log. And so I thought I'd cover a few things in this screencast today. And this would answer some of the questions that I've been receiving from some of you in emails. I thought that I'd talk about evidence of clear planning that the students need to show. I'll talk a little bit about how the production log and project queue establishes dialogue, because the EPQ is all about dialogic learning, about answers and questions that happen between you and the student. It's very important that the students foreground thoughtful change in their production log, so I'll tell you a little bit about that. I thought I'd just remind you that the spirit of the EPQ is guiding and not leading. So the student should actually be coming to the discussions with you with specific questions, and they should be setting the agenda. I'm just going to switch my camera over to this. Now, firstly, just to remind you that the students each week meet with me or Phil Oakley, Mitch Burke, or Tom Powell in an EPQ lesson. So we're covering skills all of the time. And one of the key things that we come back to in these lessons is the assessment objectives. I just want to remind you that these are all important, and many of the assessment objectives are covered principally by the production log, where the students record their thoughts and the whole EPQ journey. And in particular today, I wanted to talk a little bit about how the students have to show clear evidence of planning, or assessment objective 1. Assessment objective 2, as many of you will remember, is the use of resources, and that will come almost automatically. Assessment objective 3 is the develop and realize, and this is where the students evidence decision making, problem solving, synthesis, skills building, etc. So the idea is the production log becomes the kind of center of the project in which many of these things are evidenced all of the time. I won't talk too much about review because that's in the latter stages of the project, okay? Now I'm going to move on to an example of the initial ideas, which is on the production log. This is the first entry that the students do. And so they should have this filled in, as I'll go through in a minute, by the 15th of November. I've told them this date in the lessons. Now when they first start in the initial ideas, you'll notice that the title is often quite vague. And this is the kind of first conversation that you've had with them as regards the title. This is one of my old students, and she's written, "How effective are current cancer treatments?" Now, if you actually read the ideas here, you'll see that she's thought about some good sources. I always prefer it when students have actual sources. So in your first meetings, please establish that they have 5 to 8 different sources, particular papers or journals that they're looking at. And now going back to this particular example here, this student soon realizes from the first meeting with me how effective are current cancer treatments is an impossible kind of EPQ title. It's far too general and wide, and cancers constantly change, and they have different manifestations according to the body part in which it's at. So as you'll see in this particular example of the production log, this student narrows down the title, and this is the most important thing that we're going to do before Christmas, is to get the students to focus in on a question which is doable. I also just wanted to remind you that in addition to the production log, the student should be keeping a journal or a notebook with their ideas. This is one boy this year who's been doing it. You can see this comes from this month. And already he's keeping a journal. He's using the Cornell notes format that I've taught him. And he's keeping important dates and important ideas, which he will use as evidence for the planning, which I spoke of over here. Once again, you can see he's also keeping a very good list of the sources that he's using. So in your meetings, please can you stress to the students it is absolutely key that they keep a reference of their sources and the dates that they access them. That's something that you can discuss with them. Now within the production log, you will see it says, the summary of comments from my advisor. So as I've said before, the student should be taping or keeping notes of the conversation that you've had with them. And you'll see the student says here, my supervisor suggested I should narrow down my research. That's almost always the advice. And this particular student then went to watch an excellent documentary, cancer documentary, Enemy Within, and she starts to narrow down her title. And when you get to the final part of the initial ideas on the project queue, you get a box called Modifications I have made as a result of my discussion with my supervisor. And she ends this by talking about the fact that she's decided to narrow this title down to something which is very feasible and answerable. I have changed my title to How Effective is the Use of Reovirus in Cancer Treatment? Now, this is now a feasible working title. It may be that she's going to change this further. But what I wanted to point out here was that this is evidence of purposeful change and planning. So in terms of the mark scheme going back, it's very much evidence of AO1 project management skills, but also AO3, which is decision making and problem solving. So this particular student here, in terms of the production log, is looking closely at the assessment objectives, and she's giving me and you, because we will mark this, evidence of her skills development. Now, in terms of your project queue, if you have any problems, you can speak to Sonia Rossetti or myself. When you open up project queue, on your welcome page, you should get a list of the students who you supervise. This is a few of mine over here. So automatically, you should now be linked to this person. If you have a problem, let me know. Now, in terms of where we're going next, by December, our aim is that students will have a working title. This is not a final title, I must emphasize that, but a working title means that it's narrow, feasible, and doable. So here, once again, you can see my student. How effective is the use of reovirus in cancer treatment? And the first task that you will have to do on the project queue will be to fill in the section called the supervisor proposal. You'll see that there are three main boxes for you to fill in. And this is where you indicate the relation to and the development and the extension outside of the main course. So one of the key things here is you want to show the students not duplicating the work that they're doing in their class. So you talk to them and say why you're interested in this. And you can fill this in usually about, say, 5 lines long. You're then asked to comment on the suitability of the proposed initial sources and research base. And you will make this judgment on the basis of the materials that the students bring you. You have to be happy that the student has done enough research to show you that this research question is indeed feasible, that there is enough material out there. And then you have to make a judgment on whether you think that the project is feasible. Is it too grand? Is it too difficult? Is it doable? Does it require too much research? Or is it something that can be accomplished by somebody in the sixth form? I thought I'd just quickly give you a little bit more advice on titles for EPQs that work. And this obviously relates only to the report, the 5,000 word report. The artifact is different, and if you want to talk to me about the artifact, it's probably better that we have a face-to-face on that one. So, the title needs to be a research question. And a research question is something which is answerable. It has to be quite narrow because the student needs to go deep and show expert knowledge. It has to be feasible, okay? They must be capable of finishing it. You're checking, as I said, for sufficient literature, that they've already found that there are essays and journal articles. And please check the quality of the literature as well. It shouldn't be like casual websites, it should be academic stuff. Start to check that the student is keeping careful references. As I showed you in this outstanding example here, this student is already thinking about references and saving them. And as your students keeping references, they should be keeping evidence of the dates that they access this. The question must always be analytical and not descriptive. By descriptive, I mean they shouldn't give us loads of information, which is why any questions, what is, or how does this happen, are bad questions, because they lend themselves to regurgitation of mass information. Instead, we want argument questions. So please look to see that there is a clash of opinions on the particular subject, that there is a debate, and that the student then will lay out this debate and then analyze and evaluate is the key idea, the different sides. And I think also very importantly, make sure the student is engaged in this area, because they are going to work on this for another 10 months. Just for your records, the next stage after you've filled in your section of the production log will be a 10-minute interview that I have with the students. I'm hoping to get all of these done by mid-January. And so if you have any concerns, don't worry, because even if you've approved a topic or a question which you're not sure about, I am there to make sure that they don't go through, and it's ultimately my responsibility. After this, in January, the students will start the third entry in their production log. And this is a really important one. It's called the planning review. I'll do another screencast later, but just so that you know, this is when they break down the huge project into different sections and decide how they're going to move forward. So in terms of the assessment criteria, this would be the AO1, project management. Okay, so that's in January. So just a few key points now. Another thing with the journal is that students can cross-reference between the journal and the project cube. Some students already are keeping evidence of things like mind maps, data charts, and one or two of them have already completed courses from Coursera or courses in research skills. And now some of the key dates for you over here. I've told the students the initial ideas in Project Q should be finished by the 15th of November. The candidate proposal, this is where they come out with the working title. I'll just show you what it looks like again. The candidate proposal, that needs to be finished by Tuesday the 1st of December. After that, they'll have meetings, coordinator meetings with me, which I need to complete before the 24th of January. And then finally, students will begin the planning review Monday the 25th of January. So these are the parts of the production log that need to be completed in that time. And so I just want to round up by just reminding you that if you could direct students towards keeping evidence of all of their skills development, their critical thinking, their problem solving, etc. Much of this will be done through the production log, but it's also necessary for them to keep a journal. Thank you so much once again for listening.